So we saw that really what Marxism is out to eliminate is bourgeois property, not private property in its more Lockean sense. In fact, the Marxist is claiming that it is capitalism that is destroying the right to truly private property in its most authentic and humanistic form. So in this video, I want to explain how capitalism transitions us from this whole idea of the peasant or artisan notion of property, in truly individual property, to bourgeois property, or for short, capital. One way to illustrate this is a joke that I like to tell. It's a joke, it's a religious joke. It's a joke about God and scientists. One day scientists come to God and say, God, we've actually developed a way of producing life on our own, creating life without needing you at all. And we think we can do a better job. So we're challenging you to a contest. And so God agrees to the contest, and everyone gets together. The scientists bring their machine in which they're going to create life, and God is right there waiting for them. And God goes, go ahead, you can go first. And the scientist goes down to pick up some dirt from the ground, and just as he's about to touch the dirt, God goes, oh no, you get your own dirt. In other words, God owns the means of production, doesn't he? The scientists never really can create life on their own because they can't create out of nothing. They must always take the resources that are given to them from someone else. And so what you're going to see here is Marx is claiming that capitalism creates a similar situation, a situation where there must be this inherent separation between individual labor and property, so that individual labor never really creates property anymore, and the means of production or the property is always in the hands of those who are not the individual laborers. Well, how does this happen? Well, think of industrialization. Industrialization involves mass manufacture, and mass manufacture requires a huge amount of money and resources that no individual could ever, on their own, either acquire or completely run on their own. And so therefore, what happens with mass industrialization is there has to be this centralization of the control of the resources and the machines and technology in order to coordinate this mass production. And this centralization means what? Well, in practical terms, if I'm gonna create shoes nowadays, I have to do it by an assembly line process that involves a huge amount of machines. Obviously, I want to create thousands and hundreds of thousands of pairs of shoes in order to supply the market. And so what does this mean? This means I can't do it on my own. I need equipment, I need a factory, and I need the money to get all that. And let's say I need to be rich, or at least have access to rich people, namely banks and loans. And so therefore I do that. Now I have the equipment, I have the factory, but again, am I running that by myself? No. Now I need wage labor. I need to hire those who are actually going to make the shoes. And what does that mean? It means now I am the one who is not laboring, but I control all the means of production. I control the capital, and I have thousands of workers under me who have zero control over what they actually produce. And so therefore, what happens with this centralization of resources and means is that actually the control of what is real property is now in the hands of the very few. And the more successful capitalism is, the more it centralizes into a more and more minuscule minority the control of property, i.e. of capital, because now property just simply means the means of production, of mass production for exchange value. And so thus, what happens is the individual right to property is actually deteriorating as capitalism gets stronger and stronger, because mass production requires it. Well, then you can already see the outcome, exploitation. We saw in a previous video that wage labor, in order to make a profit, must always be paid less than the value of their labor, because their value of their labor is what adds capital. It's the only addition to capital, and therefore it's the only source of profit. And so, thus, it must create a class exploitation, because it must divide between workers and capitalists, i.e. between owners and non-owners. And so therefore, the more capitalism develops, the more it destroys the individual right to property, the more it separates the person who, by Locke's very own argument, is the one who deserves the products of their labor, i.e. their property, okay? The more it separates them from their property. And therefore capitalism, contrary to protecting private property, actually requires a stealing of it from those who Locke himself says are the ones who are entitled to it. And so, therefore, capitalism, by creating this division between the capitalist and the laborer, really, in the end, creates a new idea of property. The idea of an inherently exploitive means of production. And what Marx says is that this is untenable. It is this that the worker, that the proletariat seeks to eliminate. The worker should be entitled to their property, i.e. to the appropriation of the products of their production. But in capitalism, that's never what happens. Now you might think, well, yeah, but the laborer can earn enough money to buy a house, right? And that therefore they can acquire their own property, and communism eliminates that. He doesn't say this in the Communist Manifesto. Nowhere does he say this. In fact, what he says is, no, what we want to eliminate is the capitalist or bourgeois control over resources of production. We want the laborer to be controlling it, so that in the end, the laborer is appropriating the very thing that they have produced. Now, in our next video, what we want to do is show how that happens. And we also want to answer what we see as the practical criticism of Marx, and that is the idea that somehow putting capital property, the means of production, in the control of the laborer, of the proletariat in general, collective ownership, somehow will destroy the productivity of society because it destroys incentive. Marx has an answer to that too.